I wanted to be the Saint so badly. That scene where he's got 8 cell phones and he's talking in 8 different languages with 8 different voices. I was just like, holy shit.
So, Star Wars.
You like that. That's your thing.
I do like Star Wars. I do like Star Wars a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people want to know what I feel about JJ Abrams.
I love JJ Abrams.
I'm okay. I'm okay with him doing Star Wars.
I think it's going to be great.
See what happened, and I think this was probably, this probably wasn't planned. It could have been, you never know. But there was that weird sort of trickled out piece of news that apparently was totally false, that Zack Snyder, the visionary director of 300 and Watchmen, would be doing a Star Wars spin-off. We still don't know who was going to be doing 7, and that made me so angry. The idea of him doing a Seven Samurai remake with Jedi Knights, I was just like, I don't like that. It doesn't, too much slow motion.
But at the same time,
so then JJ Abrams after that, I'm like, okay, I can. And the thing that made me the most mad was everyone making the stupid lens flare jokes on Twitter. But
I think I made a 2-minute lens flare joke on video, so
I
fell into that. That's longer than Twitter.
Okay. First, visionary, because that's what they always say with Zack Snyder. What words are you not allowed to say that you have to go with visionary? I don't think there's a good answer for that.
You can't say auteur.
But yeah, it's visionary now seems to be almost codified. Like, not terribly successful every time he takes a swing, but he's visionary.
I think visionary is the component of auteur, which means you can look at something and know that it's that person without the exceedingly high amount of talent part of auteur, right?
Okay. So
this is a dude with a style, and I think JJ Abrams is too.
I think that JJ Abrams is very sort of. I couldn't put my finger on his style. I think he's very experimental, and he's kind of a chameleon. I thought that Super 8 was the most amazing Spielberg fan film I've ever seen.
Exactly, which is exactly.
It was like, what if you had an E.T. Close Encounter that was also a Jaws, and then there were floodlights, but they had some little lens flares.
Well,
there's children.
There's an obvious parallel that you're starting to draw here, which is the whole Steven Spielberg passes on the torch to a guy who loves Steven Spielberg and gets compared to Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg was like, go make a Steven Spielberg movie. And now, this same guy, obviously, growing up on George Lucas, has George Lucas tap him on the shoulder and say, go make a George Lucas movie.
I think he's gonna do great, you know?
I'm not saying he's going to do great or not. I'm lukewarm on JJ Abrams. Lost didn't resonate with me. Mission Impossible 3, I think we can all collectively say was kind of...
That was not the one.
Yeah, I did think Star Trek was a lot of fun.
I liked Star Trek a lot.
I like Star Trek too.
A lot. And I love Star Trek, yeah.
I don't like Star Trek. I'm the Star Wars guy. That's why we are secretly enemies.
Okay.
But I really like
that. It's not so secret.
He stole a car and listened to Beastie Boys in it. It was great. I can see why it has all those Trekkies.
I loved it. I loved it. I like that he stole the car.
Don't you find it a little strange that, so he's brought on to do Star Trek for Paramount, that no one probably thought that Star Wars was coming back, so that's fair. But no one put in their contract with him that he can't take on other major sci-fi franchises while he's attached or years after he removes himself from. I mean, you have to think that somebody over there is like, oh, we should have seen that one coming.
That's the only bitter taste that I think is going to be in people's mouths is like, as somebody who is a Star Trek fan, I kind of feel like he kind of gave me the finger a little bit. Like, just a little bit.
No, I
just like, I'm going to go do the other one now, dickbag.
I bet
How do you feel about that?
There's some lawyer who saw this coming, you know, he could see it coming. He's doing the contract, there's a little clause in there that says, come back for us, Star Wars fans.
And much like an Indiana Jones movie, you have to hold it up to a certain light and hold like a wax thing under it to see that clause in the contract.
It's secret.
Yeah.
It's written in Arabesh. That's the Star Wars font.
What's interesting is I think this is dudes who grew up on a popular franchise that are now taking the reins of the franchise. And this is something that happens in video games a lot now.
Yeah,
like a lot.
And I guess the question is it good or bad? We're about to find out. Somebody who had to grow up on Star Wars had to take the helm of Star Wars. That was an inevitability. They weren't going to give it to, I don't know, Philip Kaufman, which would be a bad idea.
I think a component of it is we all kind of look at Lucas and Spielberg and say, they can't do this anymore. They can't do this anymore. And I
Mom, we're putting Dad in a home.
Yeah, I will mow the lawn now because every time he tries to mow the lawn, he runs over the cat. Yes, that's what's going on. And I think one that sticks out to me a lot that happened recently is DMC, Devil May Cry. Capcom going, we can't do this anymore. Who can do this? Who do we give this to? And they gave it to Ninja Theory. These guys who.
Now, was Ninja Theory explicit? I reviewed this game. I can't even answer this question. That somehow that they were reverential of the original series, or
I don't know if they. I don't know if they were reverential. Like, I don't know what their history is with the series, but these are people who you can imagine if they were into games, if they were coming up on video games over the last 15 years, 20 years, whatever. They went through and they at least played Devil May Cry.
They were aware there was a series called Devil May Cry.
But I think a lot of Devil May Cry, when I was playing through it, a lot of good things that I liked from Devil May Cry were there. That kind of showed me. I'd like to think that it was Ninja Theory bringing in the good and Capcom bringing in the bad, because that's where my natural biases lie these days. You know, I want to trust that.
I'm just happy you found that much good. That's good.
The problem with a franchise or a property or a whatever it is being given to someone who is going to be sort of taking it in their new hands, they have a different idea. I feel like, for instance, with Lucas, he should not have touched the prequels.
No.
You know, I think that he should have. I mean, the whole thing is that he did the first Star Wars movie, and then he got other people to come in, and they were all very talented people, and they were kind of like, let's take your ideas and maybe just kind of, polish them and spin them and do nice things with them. And then by the time the prequels rolled around, everyone was like, but he's the guy. He's the guy. We got to let him do it. I guess he's the guy. He's the boss. And I think there's a fair amount of video game series where
it's time to pass on.
Yeah.
Well, look at going back to Capcom. Look at Resident Evil 6. Like, they're still doing them themselves.
I just popped that in.
Pop it out, buddy. Pop it right back out.
I played the beginning part, and if you told me that was a parody of video games, I would believe you.
Yeah.
I love Kojima. I love his games so much, but they are so bloated and they are so convoluted, and I would love so much to see somebody who's got a proper amount of reverence and respect for the Metal Gear series and the franchise and the canon and all the lore and all that stuff, take it and just trim the fat.
Look at Jake and Garth doing XCOM.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah.
see, and I think that's where we can draw a distinction between DMC and, say, the Metal Gear Solid series, but especially XCOM, is that it's not even just so much that there's a wealth of lore. There is something that is so well established in that franchise, how it plays, what those kind of basic, essential rule sets are. And the new XCOM respects those and knows how to take those precepts and really make them into something so much more compelling that's very modern and contemporary.
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering about with Star Wars.
The problem is
the lore something that is rich enough that you really can pull another?
For sure.
I think that Abrams, I think what he needs to remember to do is to simultaneously use what's already there to draw from, but at the same time, not use any of the characters from the movies. He needs to make a new trilogy. That's what he needs to do.
I think you're right.
There's a certain
But also he needs to make it space fantasy.
Yeah.
Because I think that Lucas tried to make it science fiction. Like he saw science fiction over the videos in the video store too many times and convinced himself that no man, you got space wizards.
Sorry, I'm picturing George Lucas in a video store right now, and it's a really funny.
What are these strange black rectangles with pictures on them?
There is so much going on in that Star Wars expanded universe that there are so many things that you can pull from to create these new movies.
You want to hear a good Star Wars movie? You want to hear an amazing Star Wars movie? I will tell you an amazing Star Wars movie right now. You take the John Wagner, Cam Kennedy, Boba Fett one-shot comics, which were done in the late 90s. This is the team that pretty much made Judge Dredd famous, and you've got Boba Fett, and he's in just the back alley where the whole planet is Mos Eisley, just these Mad Max kind of nasty ass road warrior shithole towns, and he's this kind of he's Yojimbo. He is this wandering samurai who's just I don't care who's gonna pay me, and he's kind of doing sort of good work because you want to be a little bit sympathetic, but at the same time. He's cutting off dudes' heads and he's
still a mercenary.
Yeah.
He's being a bad motherfucker. Yeah. You make Drive meets Yojimbo in space. And that is, yeah, that's.
Okay, that might be one of the best pitches I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You should probably keep that to yourself and not share that with others.
Shouldn't make a video about it.
No, definitely not. But there are things like that, and you can take that Star Wars world in so many different directions and still have it be Star Wars, because I'm equally fond of like Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars cartoons. Those little 2-minute cartoons that were made for like 6 or 7 years old.
Brevity is the soul of wit.
And I feel like JJ Abrams, he's a fan, and if he's a fan that knows enough about the fiction to pull from it and knows enough to kind of like give us all the finger when we're getting a little too fanboyish.
Okay, but here's the question, and Star Trek doesn't carry the same kind of baggage because just the way it kind of skews in its appeal. Who is the movie going to be for? This was the big conundrum about Lucas's prequels, is that they clearly were made for children. And maybe if you go back, I mean, I think Mark Hamill has said it, is that the original Star Wars movies were made for kids, but somehow I think because of the cantina and all these small touches that they were so well thought out, it resonated with adults, and or a lot of kids who saw it carried it with them into their adult life. Disney has the license. There's all the marketing potential. They're not going to want to alienate 10-year-olds because they're going to buy most of the figures.
In the 70s and 80s, you were allowed to get darker with children's fare than you normally get now, including some Disney
That's
films
why I'm all
of the
tough
time.
and stuff.
Yeah,
just so
yeah.
you know.
I can't grow a beard.
But that's why, like, you look at even Disney in the 80s and they have the Black Cauldron. You look at Don
Which
Bluth.
is the biggest disaster for them ever, both
But
creatively
it's
and
a mix,
commercially.
but it's a mix.
Sucks because the Prydain Chronicles are the jam,
It's
and
really
I would love
good.
to see
But
them.
then you look at Don Bluth and you've got Secret of NIMH. You've
yeah.
got like these 80s movies that
Also
are for
a
children.
commercial failure.
Yeah. Labyrinth, Neverending Story has dark parts. Like
Problem
even
is,
Henson
it's
Distant.
not
You know
that
what I
those-
mean?
It's not that those are dark. It's that they're kind of unrelatable. I think that Don Bluth with the Secret of NIMH, with the Rats and NIMH.
Oh, All Dogs Go to Heaven has some of the darkest scenes I've ever seen.
It got weird. It
And
got
kids
weird.
love All Dogs Go to Heaven.
It got weird. Went in the corner. I think that it's entirely possible to make a movie that is for kids of all ages.
This is what I'm saying. You make it towards kids, you put in enough of that stuff for adults, because that's the thing. Even the original Star Wars movies, you can say that they're for kids, but there are enough winks at us as adults.
Well, the Han Solo character.
Yeah.
I mean, I still believe that the original Star Wars movies, which I saw in the theater,
Who cranked the thing to make the movie go when you went there?
Without Han Solo, without that,
Yeah.
both that character and Harrison Ford's interpretation of him, I don't know if we'd be talking about the Star Wars movies as much.
That is totally true.
I don't think you could have "I Love You, I Know," which is still one of my most favorite moments in any movie ever. But that was kind of
Not a
like
Lucas
you
moment.
You took the silly the silly fantasy of everything, and gave it that kind of relatable grounding that felt like a classic Hollywood movie, something that Bogart could.
And that
be
to
in.
me is Super 8. That to me is kind of like JJ Abrams' thing. And that's why I think he will be so suited for this. Because you look at Super 8, that was a movie with like an 80s kids movie sensibility. It reminds me a lot of like Stand By Me or The Quest or something like that. And if he can bring that
E.T.
to E.T., yeah.
E.T. I mean, I think there's a lot of E.T. that's in Super 8. I mean,
Yeah. So bring that to Star Wars, and I feel like it's golden. Golden.
I think that's good. I mean, Alcatraz.
Can't fail. Star
Got me
Wars.
excited.
I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna go see it. I like Star Wars.
Come on, think about what we do for a living. Like it or not, we're gonna see it.
I hope they bring the Jar Jar back. I loved him.